Welcome to Storytime, brought to you by the OWSCyCon2019, the online book event of the year.
Kyrie remembered the day the last bird died. It had been a little brown sparrow with bright black eyes, and it sang in a cheerful whistle. He found it lying on its side, its chest rising and falling in slow, painful gasps, its legs curling beneath it, stiff and pitiful. He cupped it in his hands, feeling each fragile twitch. Its labored breath slowed to a stop, then it grew still. Kyrie felt a shock of numbness, and he held his breath, as though somehow he could hold it in, hold on to the little bird's life, if only he didn't move, or breathe, or make a sound. When he could breathe again, a howl ripped from his throat, desolate and bereft as the north winds his mother had told him about so long ago. Not everyone on Ark's ship was sad about the bird. "It's no sense to keep them here anyways," Gardner said. "They eat the seeds we should be storing for arrival. I know everyone liked their singing, but it's better we wait until landing before we take any other eggs out of cryo." "We could play recorded birdsong in the gardens," Caretaker said. "It soothes people to feel connected with nature." Kyrie rubbed his toes in the dirt. He wasn't supposed to go barefoot for sanitation reasons, Teacher had constantly reminded him. Or she had, before his parents were lost in the epidemic that swept the ship a few years after takeoff. Now, when she looked at Kyrie, her eyes watered, and she let him do whatever he wanted. He'd spent most of his school days in the gardens, watching the bird. He didn't think listening to recorded birds singing would be the same. Not at all. He would have slept in the garden that night if he could. He wanted to bury the bird there, in the shallow soil they used to grow food and produce oxygen. But Gardner frowned and muttered, "Unsanitary." So Kyrie trudged back to his module. He felt strangely heavy, except for the cold, empty hollow in his chest. He went to school the next day, though he didn't know if it was the right day of the week. Teacher was there, and she looked surprised to see him. The class was much smaller than it used to be before the epidemic. He sat at a table and dug through the paper scraps in the reusable bin. There were a few pieces large enough to draw on, and he colored them with the leftover stubs of broken crayons. Red, yellow, green, brown, blue, like the sky he remembered from a long time ago, before everyone left in the ship. He cut the color paper into squares and folded them into bird shapes, remembering the pattern his dad showed him. He'd never been good at schoolwork, but he knew the shape of things, the way they felt under his fingers. He stayed until teachers sent them back to their modules for mealtime. He took the paper birds back with him, but as colorful as they were, they didn't seem alive, even when he hung them up to fly. The air in the ship was motionless except near the vents, so the paper birds just dangled on their strings, still and limp. He went to school again the next day. Teacher's head rested heavily on her hands, but she gave him a watery smile. But there was no more paper. "We aren't using paper anymore at all. They want everything digital, using the computers," she told him in a tired voice. Kyrie's lips trembled, and Teacher added hastily, "I have some scrap metal, foil, bits of wire. They want you kids to learn technology, mechanical things. Could you make your birds out of that? I'll try to help you." He nodded silently and set to work. 12 years after the last bird died, the ship splashed down into an alien sea, then bounced and scraped its way along the coast until the fuselage became wedged into a deep crevice in the sea cliffs. Safety pods and broken-off modules lay strewn along the black sand beach, or else they sank into the water and were lost beneath the waves. Kyrie's module landed in the water after it broke off the main ship, but its emergency inflatables deployed long enough for a few dazed survivors to scramble to the top of the wreck and stare longingly at the distant shore. Most of them were children. "It is too far," Teacher said. "Even without 15 years of muscular atrophy from ship's low gravity, it is too far to swim." "The water is poison," Caretaker said. "Or it will be if we haven't had the proper immunological supports. We cannot survive the native microbiota without developing proper vaccines." Kyrie said nothing, but set to work. In the years since the epidemic, he had built bird after bird, metallic sculptures that moved and flew and sang. He had teased leftover filaments into a vivid array of feathers and sculpted lightweight frames from carbon fibers and nanotubes and scraps of broken metal. No one knew how he'd programmed them, how he'd managed to create the spark of intelligence in their soft black eyes, or make them seem to understand him. No one had bothered about him at all or tried to stop him, and if he was odd and silent, at least he stayed out of everyone's way. Besides, the birds were beautiful. The few adults who noticed listened to their songs and watched them fly through the ships and thought their delicate beauty made the days less dreary. The birds followed Curie, sometimes flocking around him in a joyous blaze of wings, sometimes trailing behind him like a line of ducklings. It had been so long since they'd seen ducklings. The flock followed him now, from out of the wreckage, flitting around, beaks open as if to taste the air. They were all different sizes, some as large as ravens with bright coppery legs and soft gray feathers, others as small as sparrows with luminous green wings. The largest was swan-shaped, and its feathers were shiny metallic color that seemed to shift as it moved, gray, purple, blue, green. This one stayed close to Curie and let out a soft, mournful hoot. Curie shook his head at the bird. "No," he said. "It will be all right. What do we have below deck? Ask the little ones to search. They can navigate the small spaces before everything is flooded." The swan gave a piercing trill, and immediately a handful of tiny metal sparrows flitted into the depths of the sinking module. They pulled up a handful of emergency supplies, rations, water purifiers, tablets to prevent sickness. The larger birds circled the wreckage, pulling up the torn remnants of the ship's solar sail. "We could make a sling," Curie said. "You could fly us to land, one at a time, if you all pulled together." The swan hooted again and flapped its wings. Curie did not know how long the birds could carry people before their wings would give out. Many of them were small and fragile, and shore looked far away. And he did not know how long they had before the module slid into the water for good. "We will do what we can," he said. Teacher would not go until all the children were safe. These were some of the only children left on board the ship, since most children had grown up since the ship had left, and only a few had been born since then. Curie convinced her to leave with the last child, who was very small, so she could hold him on her lap. "I am so proud of you," she said, as the birds flew her away. Caretaker was the last person besides Curie, but he would not get into the sling. The module was sinking fast. "The ship has been my home," he said, running a hand over the wrecked module. "And now that it's gone, I don't know what to do. I will not leave her now. You go, otherwise the birds will not have time to save you." Flying was better than Curie had imagined. The air was crisp and clean, and the movement of the wind around him felt like magic after the stagnant air of the ship. So many sights and smells, sensations like he'd never felt. The swan hooted, questioning. "Take me someplace where I can look out over the sea," Curie said. He did not want to go back just yet and see the people with their sad eyes and their lost friends. But someday he'd find them again, and the birds would sing for them, and perhaps there'd be new birds, living ones rescued and resuscitated from the ship's cryo-freeze. This land might even have its own birds, or bird-like creatures, and he would find them and learn what they were like. But if not, he would make more birds for everyone, from the rocks and minerals and metals scattered over the new world. Then he would fill its silences with singing and its emptiness with joy.
This story time was read by Phoebe Darqueling and brought to you in conjunction with the OWSCyCon 2019. OWSCyCon runs from May 17th through May 19th. You can find us at OWSCyCon.ourrightside.com. Again, OWSCyCon.ourrightside.com. We have events happening across all genres. If you are a reader, you cannot afford to miss this event. You never know. You may just find your next best read.